The 2022 NFC South was really bad. This season, the Tampa Bay Bucs went 8-9, and it was the first time in the 17-game era a team won a division with a losing record, and everyone else went 7-10. And by the way, the Bucs were destroyed in that year's playoffs. Not only that, but every team seemed like they had their own weird QB drama going on. This is one of the worst divisions of all time, the 2022 NFC South. First, let's go over the offseason. The NFL offseason began with a bang, as after just 2 seasons with the Bucs and 22 seasons in total, Tom Brady would announce his retirement. The NFL world was hoping for years that he'd retire and that he'd finally end the pain for all the NFL fans across the world, and it was finally gonna happen. Never mind, he unretired. 1 month after he retired, he came back. So we're gonna have to experience Tom Brady yet again. For the last few years, the Panthers are on a QB carousel, and this season in 2021, they decided to go with 3rd overall pick in 2018, Sam Darnold. And you look from the stats, it didn't go too well. He started 11 games, and despite going 3-0 his first 3 starts, he finished 4-7, threw for a little over 2,500 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 13 picks. It was obvious they couldn't go with him in 2022. So the Panthers would trade for Browns quarterback Baker Mayfield, and the whole story revolving him was really sad this time. It looked like he was going to be the Browns' savior, but after a shoulder injury, the Browns, for some reason, kept playing him and then gave up for him after they traded for Deshaun Watson. Speaking of Deshaun Watson, one of the teams that wanted him were the Falcons. In the background of a photo Deshaun Watson posted on his Instagram story after he got traded to the Browns, you can see a Falcons jersey in the background, indicating that the Falcons wanted him. After hearing this news, Matt Ryan was offended, and he wanted out, and he got his wish as he was traded to Indianapolis, ending the greatest Falcons tenure of all time. And as you can see from the headline, they also signed Marcus Mariota. A new era was rushing in for the Falcons, as in just a span of 2 seasons, they lost Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, arguably the 2 greatest players in franchise history. And not only that, they were projected to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. On top of signing Mariota, they would draft quarterback Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati in the 3rd round of that year's draft, and it was a very weak quarterback draft. And not only that, but they drafted Ridder as hopefully a replacement to Matt Ryan, and well, you know, that has not been the case whatsoever. And lastly, for the Saints, they would sign Andy Dalton to a backup deal, and they'd move forward with Jameis Winston, who was doing terrific in 2021, but then, however, he tore his ACL, which was really unfortunate. We look at the Super Bowl odds before the year began, and the Bucs sit at number 2, and it makes sense because, well, Tom Brady was returning. Meanwhile, the Falcons sat at the 2nd to last place, as they were projected to finish as one of the worst teams in the NFL. And it's kind of funny to look in this graphic because you got teams like the Jaguars and Seahawks who went on to make the playoffs that year. Alright, no more offseason talk. Let's get right into week 1. Funny enough, in his very first game as a Panther, Baker Mayfield would play his old team in the Browns, and it'd be really cool to see him beat his former team. However, Browns rookie kicker Katie York would crush 4 field goals that game, including the game-winning 58-yard field goal to beat the Panthers 26-24, and the Panthers would fall to 0-1. Over in Atlanta, we had a division battle going on as the Saints are down 10-26 with a little under 12 minutes to go in the 4th quarter, and Marcus Mariota had a decent performance up to that point. But in classic Falcons fashion, under 40 seconds left, they had choked the lead away, and they were only up by 2, and the Saints were driving down the field.
Lost 10 yards on the penalty. Winston fires, caught, 34-yard line by Jawan Johnson. Will Lutz from 51 to give New Orleans the lead. It is good.
A Jameis Winston masterclass, a Will Lutz game winner, and a common Falcons collapse all led to the Saints winning 27-26 in the season opener. Wide receiver Michael Thomas, who had been absent for the last 2 seasons, finally showed up as he posted 5 receptions for 57 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Saints fans were finally hoping that he was back, and spoiler alert, he wasn't. And to end the week, the Bucs beat the Cowboys 19-3 on Sunday Night Football. A very boring and traumatizing game for me, as I'm a Cowboys fan. Despite the win, Tom Brady did not perform to his usual standards, just 212 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, and this was kind of alarming to some Bucs fans, and this would be a foreshadow of things to come for this season for the Bucs and Tom Brady. But during this time, however, he was going through some personal stuff, and it was to be rumored that him and his wife Giselle had gotten a divorce because she had retired from her job after Tom Brady retired, and they were planning on spending time together and spending time with the family. But then Tom Brady unretired, and she got mad, rightfully so, and that was the rumor. I usually don't bring stuff like this up, but this could be a reason why Tom Brady had a down season this year. We now go to week 2, where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would travel to the Superdome to play the New Orleans Saints. This is big because, one, this is Tom Brady's kryptonite as a Tampa Bay Buc. He's so far 1-4 with the 1 win coming against them in the playoffs, and their most recent meeting was a 9-0 shutout. And 2, this is Jameis Winston's first game playing against the Bucs since he tore his ACL, and by the way, he tore his ACL against them. This game has also grown into a rivalry the last few years, as we've had moments like Marshawn Lattimore getting slammed by Mike Evans pretty much in a game in 2017. And you know how I said we had heated moments in the past like Mike Evans shoving Marshawn Lattimore? Well, it would happen again, as Mike Evans would run off the sideline to shove Marshawn Lattimore, and this would lead to a full-on brawl by both teams. I wouldn't really say brawl, but a very heated argument, a very heated fight, and well, it was just fun to watch. I love watching fights. Elsewhere in the division, the Panthers would lose 19-16 to the Giants, as Baker only threw for 145 and a touchdown. And the Falcons would ironically almost come back down from 20-3, but a last-minute Jalen Ramsey interception in the Falcons' end zone, or I should say the Rams' end zone, sealed a 31-27 victory for the Rams, and it also inspired one of the corniest clips in NFL history. Starting off week 3, the Panthers would finally get their first win as they beat the Saints 22-14, and Baker Mayfield threw for a little under 200 yards and a touchdown. In this game, Winston would have a normal Jameis Winston game, 345 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. Sounds about right. However, this would be his final game starting as a New Orleans Saint so far. Winston would be injured for the next 2 weeks, and despite Andy Dalton not playing the best, they would ride out with him for the rest of the season, ending Jameis Winston off on a very sad note. Famous Jameis would go out to say that him getting benched hurt his soul, and it's really sad to see, it's really sad to hear, especially from someone like Jameis Winston. I hope he finds another opportunity somewhere in the NFL. Also this week, the Bucs would suffer their first loss of the year, losing 14-12 against the Packers, as Tom Brady was continuing to not look like himself. Opposite of the Bucs, the Falcons would get their first win of the year, winning 27-23 against the Seahawks. Skipping week 4, we go to week 5 as the Buccaneers are up 21-0 against the Falcons. Really nothing special, but something weird happened. The Atlanta Falcons came back, and they're only down by 6 now, and well, this is getting really weird. This is the second time this has happened all season, and not only that, but this is against Tom Brady of all people, so it makes it even weirder. But continuing the trend of weird, this is what happens next. Nearing the end of the game, Grady Jarrett sacked Tom Brady, and it looked like the Falcons had a shot of coming back and winning. However, they called a very bad rough in the passer call, and it ended all hopes of the Falcons winning, and the Bucs would take the win 21-15, and this was a really bad call. To begin week 6, the Panthers fired head coach Matt Rule, ending a terrible 2.5-year stretch. The Panthers would promote Steve Wilkes as interim head coach. Also this week, the Panthers would start XFL legend PJ Walker at quarterback, starting a quarterback carousel mid-season for the Carolina Panthers, and also they lose 24-10 this week against the Rams. And this would be the first time all season where all teams in the division had a losing record. As you see, Bucs and the Falcons are 3-4, while the Panthers and Saints are 2-5. After the Bucs lost on Thursday Night Football to the Ravens, the Panthers and Falcons would now be playing for the number 1 spot in the NFC South, which is really funny because the Panthers fired their coach and were at 1 win 2 weeks ago. But we were about to be treated to one of the craziest games in the NFL all year. After that Amir Bird touchdown, the Falcons would kick a field goal and they'd be up by 6, and the Panthers would have the ball near the 40-yard line with under 30 seconds left with a very slight chance to win. But then this a crazy play, one of the craziest plays I've ever witnessed. But if you notice, DJ Moore threw his helmet off and jumped in the stands, which would sit a PAT back 15 yards. But no big deal, he probably made it, right?
48-yard extra point attempt by Pinheiro is no good.
The game would go into overtime where Young Hoku, the kicker for the Falcons, would make a field goal to win the game, and the Falcons would win 37-34 and take the first place in the NFC South. In the first ever Germany game, the Buccaneers would be taking on the Seahawks, and Leonard Fournette would be lining up in the Wildcat, and Tom Brady was at wide receiver, and this infamous moment happened. Here's 2 fantasy points because I had Leonard Fournette going. Why did I have Leonard Fournette going in 2022? Well, my team was really bad. Okay, I don't know how I almost forgot about this, but a few weeks before that, the Panthers traded one of the best players in the NFL and their top player on the team, running back Christian McCaffrey, to the 49ers for some draft picks, and I don't know how I almost forgot about this. This is huge news. So on top of Matt Rule being fired, they also traded away their best player. There's an obvious rebuild happening in Carolina. We cut to week 15 where we have some huge quarterback news across the division. We start with the Panthers, who released Baker Mayfield, and it was rumored that he could be picked up by the Niners, but he'd be picked up by the Rams. And this could be because Baker Mayfield was playing so bad, and they could be looking forward to drafting a quarterback in next year's draft. Like I said, he was signed by the Rams, and just 2 days after being signed, in his very first game, he'd lead the Rams to a 98-yard game-winning touchdown drive on Thursday Night Football, as he barely knew the playbook. It was truly some magical stuff only Baker Mayfield will do. And with the Falcons sitting at 5-8 and Marcus Mariota being injured, the Falcons would ride out with rookie quarterback from Cincinnati, Desmond Ridder, for the rest of the season. After being benched, Marcus Mariota would do something that has really never happened, and he left the team basically quitting on them. But if you watch the Netflix quarterback series, which Marcus Mariota was on, you know that that wasn't really the case, as he would get treated on his knee. We'll cut 2 weeks to week 17, and the 7-8 Bucs are 1 win away from winning the division. The Panthers and Saints are still in it, however, but if the Bucs win against the Panthers this week, they will win the division, and everyone else will be eliminated. Well, 2.5 minutes ago, and the Panthers have the ball, and they have to drive a long way down the field, but they can do it. Sam Darnold has the ball, and he does this.
Blitz coming, picked up, and Darnold hit, ball is loose. Who's gonna get it? Bucs say they've got it. They do!
The Bucs would win 30-24, winning the NFC South, and with them losing next week, they would make the playoffs at 8-9, becoming just the 3rd team ever in the history of the NFL to make the playoffs with a losing record. Well, in the wildcard round, they'd be taking on the Dallas Cowboys, someone they're very used to, as they beat them 19-3 in the opening week of the season. And not only that, but Tom Brady, even though he's been struggling all season long, you cannot count him out in the playoffs. So you never know. A run could happen. Well, Tom Brady played some of his worst playoff football, and the Bucs got destroyed 31-14, ending the Bucs season and ending one of the worst divisions in NFL history. So that concludes the entire story of the 2022 NFC South. After the year, Tom Brady would retire for good, and ironically, they'd sign Baker Mayfield, and he's actually done better than Tom Brady did in 2022 as he led them to the divisional round. The Panthers would trade up in the draft, and they would select Bryce Young, and so far, it hasn't turned out to be the best selection ever, but it's also not his fault. He has no help around him whatsoever. The Saints would move away from Andy Dalton and sign Derek Carr in the offseason, and he's been alright with him so far. And the Desmond Ridder experiment in Atlanta has been a complete failure. So that's pretty much the entire story of one of the worst divisions in football of all time, the 2022 NFC South. And well, that's about it. Bye-bye.